If they want to send me to jail for writing a true story in the paper, I guess that's where I'll go, but I really don't think it's going to come to that in the United States.
As Barry Bonds remains one swing away from tying Babe Ruth on the all-time home run list, a First Amendment showdown is brewing off the field. The two San Francisco Chronicle reporters who broke open the investigation into the giant outfielder's alleged use of steroids have found themselves a target of federal prosecutors.
With my partner, Mark Fainaru-Wada, I broke what's called the Balco steroid scandal in San Francisco, a conspiracy to corrupt sports at the elite level by distributing undetectable steroids.
When you went to the website for Balco, you saw all these famous athletes that were part of the company, or that were at least doing business with the company. Barry Bonds was most prominent, but Marion Jones, Tim Montgomery, Bill Romanowski.
We were delighted eventually to have the opportunity to print stories based on grand jury information from the investigation of this case. We got to print in their own words the great athletes' admissions of the drug uses.
In this particular case, the fact that we published those transcripts and wrote about Balco and the ongoing investigation did lead to a major national debate about steroids.
We met the president in 2005. He knew who we were, and he knew the stories, and he's a former baseball owner, and he said, "You've done a service."
I guess the Justice Department is not paying attention to the president.
We heard from the government almost immediately upon publishing our first story. They said, we understand you have this information, and we'd like it back, and we'd like to know how you got it.
The government wanted to know who our sources were. They wanted all the related information. They wanted the packaging it came in and so forth, anything that would identify the sources.
We couldn't assist the government in this way. We couldn't betray sources. The whole arrangement in basic news reporting is you say, look, you help me out, I won't give you up.
We talked about it, all of us, and of course, respectfully declined.
So I was most surprised to be subpoenaed before a grand jury investigating the leak of this grand jury information and seeking to punish whoever helped us with our stories.
I mean, this is a journalist who covered a story that changed the face of baseball. I just asked the government, I asked the public, is this how we want to spend our tax dollars?
We've said we're not going to betray the sources, and we mean that.
This cuts to the sort of core of what investigative journalism is about.
I respect the court system, and I'll, comply with their wishes in every way possible. But I am being told to betray not only sources, but ideals that I've held for 30 years as a reporter. And I'm also being asked to give up my career because, don't kid yourself, if they bully me into betraying my sources, I can't work anymore.
The Justice Department was way out of line here. This was an abuse of power.
They treat this like a criminal case. They talk to us as if we're subject to 35 years in prison.
If we pursue this case and lose, they could get more jail time than the original Balco defendants. It's slightly ironic.
The government just did not meet the standards set by their own guidelines. The guidelines are very clear. A media subpoena should only be sought when all other avenues of investigation have been foreclosed, and only in exigent circumstances. And exigent circumstances were explained to me to be grave national security matters.
There is a constant tension between what the press does if it's doing its job and what the government does.
It seems that there's been a policy shift where we were absolutely committed to not issuing one of these subpoenas. That seems to have changed.
For 30 or more years, there had been a certain assumption about the government and the press. And suddenly, in the last couple of years, that's changed. The government has been much more aggressive in going after the press.
So the effect of that, I'll tell you, in the last month, we've had 3 really important stories that we haven't published yet. They would not identify a single source of terrorism, but there's no protection for the reporters who are covering these stories, who are gathering this information, and there's a level of nervousness. Do I want to go to jail for this? So if Lance goes to jail, just to make it very graphic, there's two choices. He either goes in the witness protection program, where they send him somewhere else around the country and give him a new name, or he's 23 hours a day in solitary confinement.
You know, we aren't choosing prison here by any means. We feel the choice has been made by the prosecutors, and their demands are just impossible.
If we have to go to prison for this thing, then that's, I guess, what's going to happen. I don't say that lightly at all. Neither of us want to go to jail, but it's not an option for us to provide information about confidential sources.
The new role of the First Amendment bar in this country is to keep things secret. And I'm talking about bread and butter things. I'm not talking about national security. I'm not talking about anything that will crater the world. And it undercuts the serious arguments the administration makes when there are real issues.